Hey, how you doing? This is Max, and this is Maximus Uncensored, Episode 2, my Rumble channel program. If you haven't subscribed to my Rumble channel, please do. Please send me a Rumble. And also subscribe to Maximus Uncensored, the channel itself, the broadcasts themselves, on my Rumble channel. So I would appreciate those two subscriptions. Welcome to my broadcast, and this is where you get plain, straightforward, Max, unadulterated, and uncensored. um, this is episode 2, like I said, and I'll be talking about what's going on in around the country and what's going around and going on in DC and everything like that. I had a lot of questions about it. A lot of people worried or concerned or intrigued at the very least. It is disconcerting to see 25 to 30,000 National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. Now, first thing we have to understand is President Trump has ordered the National Guard there. He authorized it. And it is really to secure the Capitol after the Capitol riots. But frankly, it's excessive. And I think Rand Paul was talking about this the other day. It's like the government's underprepared or overreacts. It's never there's never equilibrium with them. But this is definitely an overreaction to what went on, which was literally a few hundred rowdy rioters that got out of hand several days ago, and you know, the idea that you authorize so many troops that you have. I mean, what do we have in Japan? Like 90,000 troops. So, you're thinking about it for a moment. We have about a third of that in D.C. right now. It's bizarre. It's really bizarre, and the optics are really, I mean, lost to the Democrats and to Republicans. I mean, there's going to be hardly anybody showing up already because of the COVID lockdowns, and the Biden the Biden transition team been telling everybody don't come, even though that's just to cover the fact that nobody would come. And now instead of civilians, you're going to have a boatload of troops with barricades and heavily armed. I mean, it almost looks like you're instituting a dictatorship. I don't like the optics of it. It looks really bad. And this from a person who got, 80 million votes. It just, the whole thing looks really bad. And I don't think it's a good message to send around the world. But if they feel they need it, so be it. The thing is that I'm looking at it and just thinking that it just doesn't look right, and it's an overreaction. But President Trump authorized it, and it is what it is. I just agree with Rand Paul. I hope they don't stick around and they're dismissed a few days after the inauguration. But it is the National Guard. It isn't the U.S. Army. But still, it's just I don't think it's very American. It doesn't look like what do you the idea that you need so many troops to secure a transition of power within a democratic institution, armed personnel around a democracy doesn't look very democratic. That's just my feelings on the subject. But what does it say about local law enforcement that they couldn't get their act together? I mean, that's another testament of how bad they were. And then, of course, I'm wondering, where was the mayor of D.C. and where are the mayors of all these Democrat-run cities, and where are the governors from all these states that have been brutalized from 7 or 8 months worth of rioting that cost billions of dollars in damage? It's just the hypocrisy is unnerving. We could have used 25, 30,000 National Guard troops spread everywhere from Portland to Kenosha just a few months ago, and I wish the president back then had invoked the Insurrection Act. That's when he could have invoked it, and it would have made perfect sense to deal with these problems in these Democrat-run cities. But nobody wanted to even send up. I mean, the police abandoned them. The police are overrun so quickly. It looks like there's a common denominator there, right? The police can't handle mobs. I mean, it was a time when the police could handle mobs, and for some reason, I think it's just because the police are literally told to stand down, and they're literally told by these Democrats, mayors, and these Democrat governors, and they're just told not to do their job, or they're afraid to do their job. And morale for the police is at an all-time low in this country because of the way they have been maligned by leftist media for so many years. So I can't really blame them. I mean, I come from a family of cops, and let me tell you, it's always a hard job. So these men and women that serve in uniform and are civilians, I mean, that serve in uniform to protect our streets, the thin blue line, they deserve our respect. And unfortunately, that's playing into the morale breakdown in the police. And then you see that, unfortunately, reflecting in their ability to actually wrestle crime. They're told they can't do anything about it. And that's why you had that autonomous zone in Portland. So, I mean, these are where they have no law enforcement, and then you have police stations burning behind news reporters, and all of that's labeled, of course, peaceful, whatever. But the reality is we have a larger systemic problem going on in the United States, and that is a social breakdown. And those are usually the first signs, or more advanced, not advanced, but those are some of the early signs. I wouldn't say the very first signs of the decline of a civilization, as Will Durant would put it, because you don't have respect for law enforcement, and law enforcement is no longer enforcing laws. And what I mean by law enforcement, I mean, broadly speaking, any type of enforcement of government policies and laws, whether it's police, whether it's military, whether it's federal agents. There's a breakdown in that. And that's what we have going on in society. From the left, we've been getting it all year. Of course, everyone overreacts to what the quote unquote right did. And I'm just going to say this to you, frankly. Look up the definition of agent provocateur. That's what it is. That's what took place. Agent provocateur infiltrated, in my opinion, a very peaceful, very well organized group of peaceful protesters in the MAGA group that went to D.C. And we're talking, what, 500,000 to 1 million? Some people said 2 million. Well, say 500,000 to 2 million. And you have a few hundred that actually got rowdy. In my opinion, those are probably mostly, largely Antifa, which it means, or Antifa / anarchists. And that's what they were. They were agent provocateurs, or in English, you'd say agent provocateurs or agents provocateurs. And it's just someone who infiltrates, to instigate, to incite, if you would, people on the opposite side of them, oppositionally, when it comes to their ideology, to commit incriminating acts. And that's what happened. And if you don't believe that, look at the person they arrested in Florida. Was it yesterday or the day before? The guy he's being brought up on charges. He is ex-military, but he's an Antifa member. And he actually, think about this, he actually traveled to Syria and was trained by Syrian terrorists. So he's a guy who's trained by Islamic fundamentalist terrorists, and comes back to the United States, joins Antifa, and is part of this movement that was going to attack the Capitals, he was going to do something in Florida at the Capitol. I think that was the news report. So the DOJ is rightfully charging him. But the thing is that this is what you have. You have these people. There are other ones that have been arrested too. You have these people, and they were really Antifa, that actually were agent provocateur. They infiltrated and they incited people to commit acts, which, frankly, don't forget, everybody was unarmed. The only people that were armed were the police, and let's not forget Ashley, who is, in my opinion, the most, she's like, to my opinion, the poster child, and she should remain the poster child. And I hope her family sues the federal government and sues the pants off of this of Washington D.C., the city of Washington D.C., and sues everybody they can sue, and makes tons of money off of it, because what happened to her was a crime, and that should live in infamy. 14-year Air Force veteran is murdered by a plainclothes agent, and that's what you saw. I mean, these were unarmed people, nevertheless, and they were rowdy, but they were in this case, one of them was shot down. And then, of course, the police officers, unfortunately, who were murdered or however you want to put it, manslaughter, whatever you want to call it, because one was, I know, crushed to death. This was a terrible, terrible day, and it was a wicked day. And again, it got out of hand, I believe, because of infiltration. And they're also, what is CNN even reporting, that they were planning this because the FBI mentioned it for days. So it has nothing to do with the president. It has nothing to do with what the president said or didn't say. This was being planned for days. Again, I believe it was possibly coordinated, but I think the role that anarchists, which we would just call Antifa anarchists, right? That's what they basically are. They're fascist, yes, but they're also anarchists. There's a lot of anarchists that are part of that. They had something to do with this. Now, you say to yourself, well, it seems like Antifa would not necessarily be associated with anarchists. I'm using the term anarchist very liberally here, but they really are. They're using anarchist. I can't speak right now, but they're using tactics that anarchists use, and that's the type of infiltration, the type of just inciting, the other side to some sort of rebellion. And now, I want to say this to you too, and this is just to the left too, as well as the right. There are, in my opinion, there are groups out there, militant groups that want to start a social war, and that's scary. And we should strive against that and all kinds of violence. And that's something that the right has to do and the left has to do, and that is condemn violence of any kind. This leads me to something else I'm going to talk about in a minute, but let me just finish this part by saying this. There are groups out there that literally want to, of course, bring down the United States. We can be Republicans or Democrats, conservative or liberals, and those terms I know are kind of blurred these days. But for instance, let me just throw this out there, totally off the wall, kind of like non sequitur, if you would. But some Trump supporters in general, have more in common with trade policies with Bernie Sanders supporters than they do with Republicans. So let me rephrase that. A message to both Trump supporters and Bernie Sanders supporters, which is the far left, including Elizabeth Warren supporters. You guys have more in common, and I'm speaking like I'm taking myself out of the equation for a moment. Trump supporters and Bernie Sanders have more in common than you think. You actually have practically the same philosophy when it comes to trade. And that's what populism does. It stretches and it reaches across political ideologies. It's a broad, big tent. If you don't believe that, look at Trump's I won't say re-election, but yeah, look at his re-election vote, because it actually was an extremely diverse group of people that voted for him, ethnically, culturally, politically, you name it, all kinds of demographics. Trump's a big tent. And to Bernie Sanders supporters who hate Trump for whatever reason that they hate him, think really well on this. Bernie Sanders sold you out. The Democratic Party sold you out. So it would be great to start dialogue with some of these leftist groups, not the radicals that are the violent ones, but I'm talking about the ones that have real ideological concerns, because we all look at big tech with suspicions. I mean, let's face it. Does anybody remember 3 years ago when the Democrats were running in the House to retake the House? They were promising an Internet Bill of Rights to target big tech. And the reason they were doing that, and Nancy Pelosi was championing that, although they never passed it, because the politicians, they never do anything, was because they were concerned that big tech was invading privacy. So they have privacy concerns with big tech. The right worried about free speech. We have commonality. The far left and the right have a commonality on that. We both don't like big tech for different reasons. In the Reagan era, we'd sit down and we'd pound it out and we'd come up with compromise. Okay? Back to trade policy. We all hate NAFTA, both the far left and the right. Now, NAFTA's gone now, thanks to Donald Trump. But I'm saying to you, I mean, if Biden or Obama was if Biden was president then, or when Obama was president, it was never going to go anywhere. Or if Bush was president, it was never going to go anywhere. So we actually, the right, have more in common with the Bernie Sanders people on trade than we do with the mainstream Republican Party. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people are calling for a new party. A lot of people are asking for that. I think we should just reform personally the Republican Party, but that's another podcast and another debate, and we can have that. And that's the wonderful thing about America is we can have these conversations, and we should be allowed to have these conversations openly. Political ideologies should be aired. We all learn from each other. I'm just giving you one perspective, my perspective right now. Now, this is segueing into something. Far left groups out there that are I think, that I said earlier, I think infiltrated what happened in D.C., and now we have 25, 30,000 National Guard that are there, rightly so, to secure the city. Let me tell you, and this is something, I've seen some chatter online about, and I've seen some chatter, I think we all have to some degree, about armed protests on the 20th. That's crap. That's garbage. Anybody, I don't care who you are or what your political ideology is. If you're going to go to a state capitol armed for anything, that's wrong. There is no reason to do that. And I don't care if you like me or not, frankly. So here's my message to people. If you hear of anybody that's going to a state capitol armed on the 20th for any reason, report them to the local law enforcement, because there's no reason to be doing that. If you want to peaceably go and protest, that's one thing. That's your prerogative and your right under the First Amendment. You have the right to peaceably assemble and petition a redress of grievances. And the only way to do that is to go and march or go out. And that's what it means. It means to go march. It means to go picket. It means to contact your elected officials. And I will be I think it's important for us to put up the office contacts to our elected officials again. I know some of my people did that a lot during the election, so we could write those emails. I think writing regular letters is even more effective. So actually mailing letters to them, I think, is more effective personally than sending an email or leaving a voicemail, but at their office. But that's what we need to do to clean up the elections before going into 2022. And I'll talk more about that in another podcast. But anybody who's going to go do anything like that, and I saw somebody was saying, I don't know how true it is because there's so much disinformation on the right and the left going on out there. But anybody that's out there advocating any type of violence of any kind, they're probably an agent provocateur. Report them to local law enforcement. Okay, because all they're doing, in my opinion, is they're working for the other side. They're probably working for the other side, or they're working for some group that wants to pit us all against each other, and that's not the United States of America. And that angers me. Just as much as spending 8 or 9 months, 7, 8, 9 months looking at the left burn down cities and police stations angered me. Like I said, I come from a family of law enforcement. I come from a family of people who serve their country. And so I love men in uniform and women in uniform for what they do, and they stand up. And I know a lot of people in the MAGA crowd are law enforcement, and I salute you. And they're also in the military, and I thank you for your service. And we should all thank them for our service. I'm going to say to you, instead of protesting, the best protest is to do it with the wallet. It's sort of like voting with your feet. Right? So in this case here, how about this? How about every MAGA supporter cut out or close their Amazon account? And when they, on January 20th, think about that. Think if you can even get 1 million Trump supporters to close their close your MAGA account, close their Amazon account on January 20th. Think about the message it sends for free speech, the message it sends to the markets, the message it sends to Wall Street, the message it sends to Washington. That's a powerful message, considering the lobbyists even get paid from these companies, right? So I would just consider that. If you haven't already, consider getting off of Facebook and Instagram. Close those accounts too. And when you do, always send a letter explaining why you're doing it, because trust me, they do read those letters. And it doesn't hurt. So that's something, I think that's a more powerful tool. And it certainly will give them pause, and it'll certainly send their market caps further down. That's just an idea. Anyways, if you enjoy the broadcast, please consider supporting. There's a link to my PayPal account, Maximus Deplorabilis, at the bottom of the screen. And I would appreciate the support. Also, if you want to follow me, I'm at Maximus _4 EVR on Twitter and Gab. And on Parler, it's at Maximus 4 EVR. I have a seminar coming up too, if you'd like to join us. It is Civics Maximus, and the topics are going to basically be talking about history and civics. It's going to be a seminar. It'll be 3 days. It's January 21st to the 23rd. We're going to be starting at approximately 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're welcome to join us. There is a fee and a sign-up process. DM me or Jen or Roxy for more information on that. It's going to be interesting. Day one is actually going to be a discussion on the structure of government and its functions, operations, and its relation to classical examples such as Athens and Rome. And I will be discussing this. It'll be in Socratic format, where I'll actually introduce themes, speak on it for a little bit, then take questions, and there'll be a lot of back and forth. So there's going to be a lot of interactions. And the Socratic format is probably the best way of learning. It's when you actually interrogate an idea or a theme and you go back and forth, usually to find a truth, but in this case, it's going to be to learn the most about it. And so it's a lot of discussion. It's not just lecturing as the standard American practices. And it's going to be very interesting. And so you're welcome to join us again. And it'll be the first time I'm doing it. I should be doing further times, but if you're interested, do just contact me. I'd appreciate it. And the sign up is through is PayPal as well. It doubles as the sign up for that. If you are going to sign up for that, after you pay the fee, make sure you note that which day. You don't have to do all 3 days. You can, pick a day if you want. But day one is going to be on American government, and it'll be you will be going into the function of the U.S. government, and my students / my quote unquote my students. You guys can actually ask me all the questions you want. It should run for about 2 hours. If we go over, we go over. I know it's going to be later in the day, but this way, everybody, East and West Coast, because I have people from different parts of the country that will be joining us. At least when I know they're home, they're off of work, and through a dinner and everything like that. Well, listen, anyways, God bless you. Thank you for joining, and please do subscribe to my Rumble channel. I am going to be porting more and more over to Rumble. And do give me a rumble, and I guess that's the equivalent of a thumbs up. And also appreciate any support. Again, the links are below the video. God bless you. Keep the faith. Keep at peace. God is in control, and I'll see you soon. Ciao.